Okay, so we are live on this evening, 19th of September. A lot to talk about now. I'm going to start with the NHL, and we're going to start with the Winnipeg Jets situation, which is my favourite team. And we're going to look at what's going on with Patrick Laine, what's going on with Dustin Bufflin, and what's going on with Kyle Connor. We'll get to football and rugby union and other things in due course. What's happening is Dustin Bufflin's got a leave of absence. It's looking very likely he's going to retire. Injuries have caught up with him. He's 34 years old. And fans love him. While the defence core has been decimated, and we can discuss the players they brought in, the players they have, and the players they've lost, and we can discuss that death. I've done that on other videos. What we can look at right now is a guy who's going to leave $14 million on the table. He's not going to, if he does walk away, he's not asking to take that money and be paid out in full. So he's willing to pay back the rest of his contract, which is pretty decent of him, which leaves space to sign players like Laine and Connor. The Laine situation, he's given an interview to a Finnish publication back in Finland where he lives. And he's basically saying, I'm not playing with good players. Anywhere else I go in the NHL, I can play on a top line. I can be a superstar, but I have to play with these guys, which is referencing Brian Little and Nikolai Ehlers, who are two pretty decent players in their own right. Nikolai Ehlers capable of 60, 70, 80 points a season, and Brian Little is a veteran player, key part of the leadership group of the organisation. He's probably going to retire a Jet. Yeah, very interesting. So getting him back in the dressing room, I think we can see where some of the issues in that dressing room unrest are coming from, and it's probably coming from him. Fans are losing patience with him. He's running out of friends very, very quickly because if he does resign, he's going to go back into a dressing room that doesn't want him. And Kyle Connor, we'll have to see what happens, but if Bufflin decides to announce retirement, there is cap space, which is something really important, and we can discuss that if the questions come that way. Rugby union side of things, Rob Howley's been sent home from the Welsh camp as backs coach over a betting breach or betting breaches. From what we understand, the rugby authorities were alerted a week ago, and they went to Japan. They took part in this open training session in front of 15,000 people, and then Warren Gatland and the rest of the coaching staff and key leadership players within that playing group, decided on his replacement, which was Stephen Jones, who's going to be part of the future coaching team with Wayne Pivac anyway. Done a video on that. That's an exceptionally complicated issue. I think we'll have to wait and see what happens with Rob Howley, but it's looking highly likely that he's breached betting rules. So, Arsenal Fan 19, hello to you. Obviously, the Champions League and Europa League have returned. Europa League tonight, obviously. We've had the Champions League group stages yesterday and the day before. Some really interesting results for British sides. Could have been better, but it's the group stage. The group stage is not the end of the world. But it is interesting looking at how, after the international break, how well England played with those two wins. Although defensively, England look shambolic. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sold on England's defence. I'm not sold on Jordan Pickford in goal. I've been saying that for a while. And what is concerning is they don't seem to have a dominant centre-back. On the Arsenal side of things, I do work with some Arsenal fans, and throwing away that 2-0 lead is indicative of what's been going on with Arsenal for years and years. Close, but so far, they seem to struggle in these pressure situations. Same with Tottenham. The two North London clubs, while Arsenal have won some silverware recently, Tottenham also have the similar issues where in crunch situations they just fall apart, and they can't get over the hump. They're in these pressure situations. They're playing really well. They're leading games, and then they end up not winning important games. Now, yes, it is the Champions League group stage, but again, from a winning position, leaving goals on the table and ending up not winning the game. There's ongoing concerns there. How long will Pochettino be in charge as manager? How long will some of those star players stay, like Christian Eriksen? Is he on the way out? A whole host of issues with Tottenham. Arsenal, they've been stagnating for a while. That Europa League final defeat to Chelsea is a bitter taste. I would say there are issues with Arsenal's recruitment policy over the last decades. That lack of league success, a couple of FA Cups here or there is not enough going forward. The squad they have is lacking, I think, a bit of spice, a bit of pushback, a bit of intensity. and they are lacking that defensive coordination and defensive stability. They are too loose at the back. That they play a certain style of play, but they don't. They are lacking that grit in midfield, that physical kind of Patrick Vieira type player, Emmanuel Petit type player who can be skillful but also get stuck in. Tottenham, I think they're lacking that big game mentality. They tend to they regularly throw things away in big games. They can't quite get over the hump. They can't quite get that first trophy, whatever trophy that may be it Champions League, League Cup, FA Cup, Premier League. They can't get that first piece of silverware as a group of players. They haven't won a trophy for over a decade. And how long can they continue like this, where they're the nearly men? They're like, they're second best all the time. And I would say Liverpool and Man City are further ahead in the league. I would say there are clubs around like Leicester who've really massively bounced back after a couple of wobbly seasons after winning the Premier League. They are not taking that next step where other clubs are. And you could look at last season not signing any players, which has had an impact clearly, over the whole season. Yes, they still finished in the Champions League places, didn't sign any players. There were no new signings for 18 months. That has clearly hampered the team. And every Tottenham fan I know said, we're going to win. We will win a trophy this year. And they've been saying that since Pochettino took over. They still are lacking silverware. On a variety of things, there's a lot of sports to talk about. Obviously, England drawing the Ashes series, although losing the Ashes overall because Australia won the series down under. I remember when an Ashes series was once every 4 years. Now it's every 2 years, and I think that's devalued the rivalry. I think rather than adding to the intensity, I think it's devalued it. I think that was a mistake by the ICC, the ECB, and Cricket Australia to schedule them every 2 years. I think that's devalued the Ashes completely. Rather than on a 4 year cycle, it's on a 2 year cycle. We play each other too regularly. There's too much cricket between Australia and England. They've over-marketed it. They've oversaturated it, and we can debate. Should Joe Root stay captain? Should Tim Payne stay Australia captain? All that. I wouldn't say go further. I would say I think they have devalued the rivalry. I think it was a special rivalry. When I was a kid growing up, I remember the 2001 Ashes and Mark Butcher's century in the third test to at least get a win in a test match. We haven't been whitewashed at home, I think, ever by Australia. I remember the 2005 Ashes where England finally got the Ashes back after a lengthy wait. What I find annoying is since 2005, the ECB and Cricket Australia have agreed together to have the Ashes every 2 years. It's devalued it. It's just a thing now. England and Australia don't play enough Test series against other nations because they have to cycle in 2 Ashes series every in 2 years. I don't know. It's a moneymaker. They've gone for the moneymaker. The TV rights is a big debating point over here in the UK. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but I know that there's issues with the Sheffield Shield and cricket in Australia as well. Not just the whole ball tampering, sandpaper scandal last year. There are other issues as well with Australian cricket. Same with English cricket. The county game is suffering. They're coming up with this stupid 100-ball format that no one wants apart from Sky, who basically control the purse strings, and the ECB, who are gutless. And the whole Ben Stokes situation with now what's come out in the media and what the Sun, which is a Murdoch newspaper, again, the Australian-UK link there. While I'm not a big fan of Ben Stokes, what the Sun have gone and published is disgraceful. It is what it is. There is talk about changing and getting more free-to-air cricket back on our TVs. I think the viewership on pay subscription sports is dropping on a whole. And, we get the Cricket World Cup final free to air was a massive 2 fingers. I mean, Sky had everything in that tournament up until the final. And then they suddenly, because England got to the final, they put it on free to air TV. Had Australia won that game and played New Zealand in the final, it would be on subscription TV. We would have missed a classic. And the viewership figures speak for themselves. The majority of people watched on free to air Channel 4. And that basically, sums up what the cricket fan wants. The ECB chased the money in 2005 to the damage of the game. I honestly believe that. I believe the state of cricket as it currently stands is not where it should be. And a whole generation of kids have missed out and young adults have missed out. Partly because if you look at it in real terms, financially, people are not as well off as what they were. Salaries have not increased. Spending, people are more wary about their money. The Sky subscription keeps going up. The BT Sports subscription keeps going up. I know in Australia there are similar concerns about TV rights packages for the NRL, the AFL cricket. the A-League, a whole host of other sports in Australia as well. The debate rolls on, and of course, the Murdoch media has a massive part to play in Australian media as well, with Fox. And questions have to be asked about plurality of the media and accessibility, because people my age are not buying Sky Sports, they're not buying BT Sport, they're not paying for subscription TV. They are turning against it. They're going for Now TV, Amazon Prime, still subscription, but they're turning against the more expensive subscriptions and things like that. And there comes a matter of point where that business model is not sustainable, because people just find a thing called a VPN, which is cheaper. And these media companies spend millions and millions and millions trying to shut down these illegal streams and VPNs. And in actuality, they should be looking at, okay, why are people doing this? Oh, wait, we're overcharging. We might want to change our structures. Now, Sky in the UK is no longer owned by Murdoch. It's now owned by an American company called Comcast, which means in a couple of years, in 2 years' time, there's the TV rights deals go up for renewal. For the next set batch of sports deals, like rugby league. I know ice hockey now in the UK is on Free Sports, Premier Sports, so that sport's been taken away from the Murdoch grip of destruction. Oh yeah, no, Comcast is shocking, but we'll have to wait to see what happens with the structure of their TV arm, which is Sky, and how they restructure it. I can see massive changes coming, whether that's to the benefit or detriment of a variety of sports, because rugby league is in a bit of a situation with falling crowds, struggling clubs in the UK. They're not making any money. The only team that really can stand alone by itself is the Toronto Wolfpack. And clubs are losing money hand over fist. The TV deal doesn't work. Fans are unhappy with games scheduling being changed to suit TV rather than what the fans want, which is what they wanted the final of the season, a regular season. All games be played at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. Sky changed the kickoff times for the relegation battle games, and that pissed a lot of fans off who've obviously tried to book tickets, travel, etc., etc., especially London Broncos fans. Think how they feel. I know they got relegated, but at the end of the day, the TV deal with the Super League is clean. It's just not working. With all the money that's in subscription sport, why is the Super League running out of money? Why is the RFL asking the non-English clubs to pay to enter the Challenge Cup, which ended up embarrassing the RFL when the Catalan Dragons said, we're going to boycott then, and we're the holders of the trophy, and we're going to boycott. The NRL, yes, I have to admit that the games that I managed to watch, not necessarily legitimately, however, are normally I watch full match replays on a website because it's just cheaper. It's called Free. I'm sorry, but I don't have a couple £100 lying around to pay for the Watch NRL, which is the licensed website here in the UK. If you live outside your Australasia area, it's still a couple £100 for a year. And while that's cheaper than a Sky subscription by a fair bit of money, it's still a large amount of money going out on a subscription. Again, while it is cheaper, it would be nice to see more accessible. I mean, it's the better product. I have to admit, the NRL is the better product. And you know, this is a very open final series with the Melbourne Storm losing, the Roosters beating Souths. You know, Cronulla out, Paul Gallen's retired, Hodgkinson's retired. You know, Robbie Farah has retired. There's a lot of big names going out. The sport's in a big, change right now. Some old veterans are retiring. Some new and up and comers are coming through and tearing the game up. It's a better product. It's a really interesting final series. As a Raiders fan, I am so happy that they beat the Storm and they get a week off this weekend. The NRL is a far better product. Far better product. I would say out of all the teams in the NRL, minus the Gold Coast Titans, who are absolutely hopeless, I think if you put them against the Super League teams, they win most of the games. We saw last year in the World Club Challenge games where the Super League sides had already started their season. They've been playing. They, 2, 3, 4 weeks into the season. They even played some games, double headers, over in Australia to acclimatise the teams to the Australian conditions that were significantly different to the UK conditions. And when it came to actual World Cup Challenge, all three Super League teams were battered by the NRL. It wasn't even close. If you look at the combined totals of score, overall that was an embarrassing 3 defeats for the Super League sides, and these were 3 really good Super League sides from the season before. And at the end of the day, like I sit here and I go, yes, the NRL is the far better product. The crowds are better. You've got Parramatta Stadium, Westbank Stadium, which would be half empty at a Super League weekend if it's a Super League fixture. I have no doubt. And Parramatta can fill that stadium, pack it out. You've got the Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane regularly for the allocations they're allowed for the various crowd numbers they can have for live events, because there are some weeks where they are constrained with how many tickets they can sell. Again, when they can sell out their allocation when for the Broncos, Melbourne, decent crowds in Melbourne, even though it's AFL country, and the Storm are, even though they are the most successful team, they could do a little bit better. But again, they're regularly filling that stadium. You look at some of the suburban grounds, regularly filled, regularly full to overflowing. You wouldn't get that in the Super League at the moment. I mean, there is clearly a concern that there isn't the money in Super League in the UK. Teams are losing money, and viewership is down in grounds. Ticket receipts are down, and I think the TV deal is part and parcel with that. Also, the way the RFL dealt with the Challenge Cup, with the overseas teams, the non-English teams having to pay to enter, that's left a bit of taste in the mouths of Toulouse, Toronto, and Catalan. And they then reduced Catalan's entrance fee, but Catalan was still not happy to pay that money when the English teams that participate in the Challenge Cup were entrance fee exempt. So there's a big, divide between the traditionalists and the globalists when it comes to rugby league in the UK. And we can look at a whole variety of things with that. But I'm looking forward to the Lions series against New Zealand, Tonga and Papua, or Fiji, I think, or Tonga and Papua New Guinea. I mean, that's going to be fun. It's been a long time since the Lions, the Rugby League Lions were a thing. But the issue is it's basically an England team with a couple of Welsh, Scottish and Irish players sprinkled in there. This is where something's gone horribly, horribly wrong, is that the RFL have decided, instead of going with all four home nations, they've really put all their eggs with the England side. And while England got to the World Cup final 2 years ago, that was a great achievement considering that there were some issues with that. They've really bundled all their efforts into the England side, and to the detriment of Scotland, Wales and Ireland have been left behind. And then it's not really a Lions tour then, is it? It's just a rebadged England team with maybe a Welsh player here, a Scottish player there, maybe a couple of Irish players. And that's not necessarily a good thing. The GB Lions were, it was fun to watch them. Win or lose, it was a great event. And the Australians and the Kiwis would up their game as well. And there were some physical battles and some physical series between those countries. I think that is a detriment to rugby league. I think the RFL made a mistake there as well, on a personal point, because the 3 of the 4 home nations have been left behind in their development and their progression, and the funding. Funding's a big issue. But we'll see what happens. The TV deal is up. The Catalan Dragons want the Magic Weekend played in France, and that's an idea. There are a lot of French rugby league fans. You've got Toulouse as well, who are a very, very good side, and they've left the French system as well to join the British system, which is what it is. We'll see what happens. But there are concerns with rugby league, with its governance, its direction, its finances, and the growth of the game outside the north of England in the UK. Australia, there's debates about having a team in Perth, moving a team out of Sydney, Cronulla redeveloping their stadium, because they're the only NRL team that actually own their stadium. Should the NRL go with these big city stadiums or the suburban grounds? I would argue the suburban grounds, and redevelop the suburban grounds and keep teams in Sydney or wherever they play at their home ground. I would argue for that. I think the AFL has gone the other way and gone with building the big city grounds. I don't know. I mean, I'm a fan of both codes, but I think the NRL should possibly focus on assisting clubs with redeveloping their home grounds, suburban grounds in Sydney and St George, and looking at possibly expanding rather than relocating teams. I think expanding would be better. I'll try to. I have a very, very busy weekend planned. I'll possibly be able to catch some games on the Saturday morning. Obviously, with work and with the hours that I work, I will not be able to watch as many games as I would like of this World Cup because of the time differential. But I'll be able to catch, I think, a couple of games on Saturday. maybe a game or two on Sunday. But with the work that I'm doing and the hours that I work, where I have to leave the house at 5:30 in the morning, and I don't finish work till sometimes 5 in the afternoon latest. I think the latest I've got home is at 4:30. Um, it's just timings. So I'll be able to catch some highlights. I will try and catch one of the big games or any game, to be fair, and do a video review. But the TV has blown up. So our TV has died. And the other TV is temperamental. So we've had to buy a new TV, which has been ordered and is arriving Saturday about lunchtime. So I'll have to try and keep the old box going. But I should try and watch a game or two. But I have a very, very busy weekend. I'm not actually here for most of the weekend. I'm away. So I'm trying to juggle a lot of stuff all at the same time, which is really difficult. But it's the joys of being an adult, I suppose. But I think the Springboks All Blacks game, if that was the final, which again, it's very likely it could be. This could be a preview of the final. We had this with the Springboks in England in 2007, where they played in the group stage and played in the final. That is very likely a final matchup there. ITV is pretty good. The World Cup football coverage that they have and the World Cup rugby union coverage they have is generally pretty good. Their horse racing coverage is better than Channel 4's. Lots of ads, though. Be prepared for a hell of a lot of ad breaks in the build up to the game and the post match review. When the match is actually on, not so many ad breaks, but when you've got the build up, ad breaks, too many ad breaks. They plaster you with ad breaks in the pre match build up and the post match review. When the game is actually on, no ads in play. Unless there's like a severe lengthy injury delay, there are no ads in play. So it's a toss up, but it's free to air TV. Ironically, you have less advertising time than on Sky or BT or Free Sports or anything on the Sky package. So, ironically, it is what it is. But the actual pundits they get in place, the people in the studio, the experts, they get some pretty good, pretty good. Some pretty good experts in there. And I think ITV have signed a long term deal with the for the rugby rights. So, not the end of the world there, I wouldn't have thought, but it is what it is. Of course, it could be better, less ad breaks, but they've done pretty good with the Football World Cup over the years and the Euros. When they had the Champions League and Europa League, they were pretty good as well. And it's a bit annoying that they no longer have that. And I think a lot of people are annoyed that that's gone to BT. How long that stays just solely BT, we shall obviously wait and see over the next couple of years until the next TV rights deal is up for renewal. But I am looking forward to the Rugby World Cup. I won't be able to watch as many games as I would like because of the time of day that they're taking place, because the World Cup's in Japan. It was the same in 2011 when the World Cup was in New Zealand. It's similar time zone, so I'll be able to catch a game here or there, mostly on the weekends. So I should be able to watch some of the knockout games and the final. I do think the Springboks All Blacks could be a preview of the final. And the All Blacks are looking quite human. I think the All Blacks this year are not as good as what they were in 2015. I think 2015, 2016, they peaked. When Ireland beat them the first time, that was the sign that we're human. They were human. And how they handled how the Irish handled them in the autumn summed up that they are very beatable and very containable as well. It's almost like you can beat the All Blacks every now and then. You can contain the All Blacks. And the All Blacks aren't necessarily the invincible machine that they have been for the last decade or so. They are very, very beatable. They are very, very human. There are weaknesses there. Goal kicking is an issue. Kicking from hand can be an issue as well. So accuracy. Ironically, for the All Blacks, yes, they can make mistakes with their kicking, be it from the kicking tee at goal or in open play. There are weaknesses to be exploited. But at the same time, with 4 or 5, I think this is where the World Cup, or the world rankings are flawed, because over the last few weeks of the pre-World Cup games, the number one spot changed like 4 or 5 times in 2 days. I think Wales have been disrupted by the Rob Howley allegations about these betting breaches. I think while it's not the biggest disruption in the world, the way it's been handled by the WRU, the Welsh Rugby Union, the World Rugby, and the betting company that actually alerted them, because obviously if your occupation is a sports coach, you're not allowed to bet on that sport you're coaching in. And they alerted with their integrity unit. They alerted the rugby authorities the day they go to Japan. The way it's been handled, could it have waited till after the World Cup? Could they have actually alerted the authorities earlier before they actually travelled out to Japan? I think that's going to be interesting how that all plays out. That is somewhat distracting for the players, but Stephen Jones coming in as the backs coach, he's played under Warren Gatland as an international. He's played with some of these players that he's going to be coaching, like Alan Wynne-Jones, the veteran leadership group. He's going to be part of the future coaching team with Wayne Pivac anyway. So there is a silver lining for Wales. It is disruptive. How much that disrupts them in the World Cup, they're probably going to play with an experimental backline tactic against Georgia anyway. They should win that game. They can experiment with a few tactics and try and iron out any issues, because Stephen Jones will have Wayne Pivac would have sat there and gone, this is how we're going to adjust our backline. This is what we're going to do with backline tactics. Obviously, Rob Howley would have had his own tactics in mind with Warren Gatland. So it's going to be sort of a hybrid kind of thing from set play. Stephen Jones is a great player. England, no, I'm not. England aren't going to win it. There's too many issues with England's setup. I think they've gone with two very bland fly halves. Owen Farrell is not a world-class fly half. I don't care what people say. There's too many penalties in this team. Too much ill discipline. Cipriani should have gone because, he can be that joker in the pack just to bring on. He can also play fullback. Fullback is an issue for England. Ireland, they've been misfiring the last 12 or so months. A lot of their players have played a lot of rugby. Fitness is an issue for some of their stars. Scotland, David Denton's obviously retired this week with concussion problems. He hasn't played, he hadn't been able to play for 10, 11 months. So they've lost a key forward, which they've been playing without for a year anyway. But that's something that you don't hear on the eve of the tournament. By the way, lads, I'm 29. I'm retiring from the sport. I've had a concussion. Can't play. Symptoms are still there. So that's an issue for Scotland. The French, God knows what French team's going to turn up. Australia beating the All Blacks by a record scoreline in the Rugby Championship, by the way, a couple of weeks ago, not that long ago, about a month ago. About a month ago, they record scoreline. And then the return fixture, they get battered themselves, but they proved again that on the day, the All Blacks are beatable, and that was a record defeat for the All Blacks as well. So not only was it a record win for Australia against a Tier 1 nation, it was also a record defeat for the All Blacks. So the even without Israel Folau overshadowing all that, bang, that shows what is capable. South Africa, as I said, they've gone through their transition period. They've had some wobbly moments the last couple of years. They've had some issues, but you never underestimate the Box. Argentina should never underestimate them either. They love the World Cup. They always up their game for this tournament. It's every 4 years. They are dangerous and should not be underestimated. Wouldn't be surprised if they make the semi-finals. And some of the Pacific Island nations could make the quarters as well. Japan hosts, that will give them a boost. And they've been able to beat Tier 1 nations. Tonga have been able to beat Tier 1 nations. Don't ignore that defeat to the All Blacks. Ignore that. Honestly, this is going to be a very open tournament. I really believe that. I think what's happened with some of the selections from England and their discipline, what's happened with Ireland being hot and cold, the Welsh with Rob Howley basically being sacked in disgrace on the eve of the World Cup. Very open tournament. Absolutely very open tournament. So much is going to happen. And while I won't be able to watch every single game, a lot is going to happen in the next six or so weeks. A lot is going to happen. Really, very, very open. All Blacks is New Zealand. Very surprised I don't know that. The Leeds Chiefs first game losing 3-1 to the Steel Dogs. They were 1-0 up in that game as well. And there's been rumours that they haven't been able to train and they haven't got the biggest squad and all this stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing them play and seeing what they're all about. It's going to be tough for them. Absolutely. They're not predicted to do much. It's going to be tough for them. As long as they're competitive, I think that's the important thing. As long as they can take a lot from it and develop something up there and build a club up there and grow the game and grow the sport, I think that's going to be the primary goal in the first couple of years, is to build a fan base, build a club, and grow and stabilize and be as competitive as possible and go from there. The World Cup is a long tournament. It's a brutal tournament. You've got the pool stages and the knockouts. it's the most open World Cup I can think of for a generation. Absolutely. I think the All Blacks are not as good as what they were 2.5, 3 years ago. I think they've peaked as a group, and while they're still the best team in the world, they are very vulnerable. Partly because they've been so invincible, or seemingly so invincible for so long. I think there are some vulnerabilities there. There are some weaknesses there, and goal kicking and kicking in general has been an issue over the last year or so, 2 years. There are some gaps appearing, and there are money issues in the Southern Hemisphere, which results in a lot of players going to Europe to play. And it's a known fact that the selection policy of Australia and New Zealand is you've got to be playing in Super Rugby. You've got to be playing domestically. South Africa have a more flexible approach because they know two of their teams play in the Pro League, and they are more flexible now in their approach to top players. They can't rely on just selecting from Super Rugby. They've only got 3 franchises. But I do think this protectionist, you can only play in your own country kind of selection policy unless you have so many caps, is a disastrous decision because there's just not enough money in World Rugby to go around. Money is a big issue. The Bracknell Bees, oh God, I'm not able to go to this weekend's games. I've got a very, very busy weekend. I'm away this weekend, but Goss is not a good goaltender. I've seen colanders and sieves that contain better water retention. He's a shocking goalie. Players injured, players not wanting to play for the coach. There's all sorts of rumours going around. I think we'll see what happens. We've got Peterborough first up, so I'm not even going to that game. But anything can happen in the actual regular season. But this pre-season's been and the off-season's been a shambles. Players leaving, rumours that players don't want to play for the coach. Some of the signings are a bit bizarre, and Kovar getting injured hasn't helped. But defensively, not good enough. And going the other way, goal scoring, yeah, score goals. There are goals there. Defensively, shambolic, and they really signed a shocking goaltender. I don't know why Goss is signed. He's not very good, and that's been being polite because I don't want to swear. Because my views on Goss is less than PG, and I don't think YouTube will allow that. Yeah, I also agree after the Rugby World Cup is done, there will be changes in how the professional game is done and where the money's distributed. Looking at Super Rugby, there are money issues in the Southern Hemisphere. Looking at Welsh Rugby in the Northern Hemisphere, there are money issues. So at the professional level, centralised contracts are a problem. Selection rules for countries, how to select players is a problem. And in the sense at the club level, Rugby League is ahead. On the international level, yes, Rugby Union is better than Rugby League. More countries play it. There's more registered players, more clubs. But the issue is money and sharing the money. And where the money goes, who gets what. It's even New Zealand, the New Zealand Rugby Union have money issues. They cannot afford to keep all their players on centralised contracts, and this is why a lot of All Black players and Wallabies and Springboks are going to Europe to play their rugby at club level. They want to earn some money. And if that means they can't play for their country, they've got to earn a living out of a sport where their career could be cut very, very short. We've seen David Denton, Pat Lambie. They both retired because of concussion problems in the last 12 months. They're the same age as me. They're 29, and their careers are done. Dave Denton, really destructive ball carrier, powerful forward, makes good yardage. Very, very mobile for a back row forward as well. Could play in the centres if he could be converted. He's had to retire. Pat Lambie, fly half and fullback primarily. He can play either. Great goal kicker, kicking from hand, bringing players into play. Very skilled outside half. Done. Both 29, both retired in World Cup year. This is how short your career can be in rugby. Players want to get paid. They want to earn as much money as possible before their career is ended. And some careers at professional level don't last very long. Don't last very long at all. And you look at it, and professional rugby union players, we're not talking rugby league. Rugby league, we know there's more money in rugby league at club level. Rugby union players, the average salary is not as high as you think for a year. an average yearly salary is an average weekly salary in the Premier League. I'm just putting it out there. Rugby players are massively underpaid for what they do. But there is a money issue where certain players are on these big centralised contracts and other players are basically journeymen. This is why the Tier 2 nations... there you go. It is what it is. And the revenue sharing between a Tier 2 and Tier 1 nation when they play head-to-head, who gets what, massive disparity there, massive imbalance there, and that's a big problem that's got to get resolved. And countries like Fiji and Tonga and Samoa and Georgia and Romania and Russia, all these Tier 2 and Tier 3 nations, when they play test matches and they're getting paid, their players are getting paid £500 to turn up against £20,000 for, let's say, England, Wales, Scotland. That's not right. That's not right. And I think the players need to start taking a stand and saying, look, we want to share the revenues where we get 20 grand and they get 20 grand, because otherwise it's unsustainable and people aren't going to want to play for their country because they can't get paid. It shouldn't be this way. They should have equal revenue sharing, 50-50 for test matches through the hosts and the visiting team. Otherwise, it's just a money-making scheme for the Tier 1 nations to get wealthier and the Tier 2 and Tier 3 nations to get poorer, unless, unlike the US, where they have corporate sponsorship. I get that they don't want Georgia to go take that next step for the fact that they would get battered. But when they play autumn tests, they should get paid an equal amount to represent their country. It's revenue sharing. It's not who should play in what competition. It's at club level, they get paid a salary. When they are released by their clubs to play for their test nations, they get an appearance fee for each test. And when that disparity is, let's say England are playing Georgia at Twickenham, the Georgians are getting £500 to £1,000 a player. The English players are getting a minimum of 20 grand just to turn up on the bench. I'm sorry, that is wrong. I am very, very sorry, that is wrong. Because there's no way to revenue share gate receipts, especially with the TV money, the sponsorship, the corporate. That's not right. There's a reason why the game is not developing at the pace it should do at the Tier 2 and Tier 3 nation level, unless, unlike the USA and Japan, you have the corporate money behind them to prop them up. That is no way to run the sport. That's the big issue. They should. The World Rugby's plans to fiddle with the rugby calendar were pointless. They should have looked at match revenue sharing. Plain and simple. When it comes to test matches outside of a World Cup, they should share those revenues 50-50 between the Tier 1 and Tier 2. If those Tier 2 nations, like the USA, let's say Canada played autumn internationals over here as well. Let's say these autumn internationals, when the teams go on tour, you've got your Tongas and your Fijis and your Georgias, and they're playing, let's say, in Scotland or Ireland or Wales or England or wherever it may be. And their players are only getting paid £500 compared to £20,000 for an appearance. That's not right. Look, plenty of corrupt officials are making a lot of money. This is why Samoa is bankrupt at Rugby League and Rugby Union international level. This is why Samoa is in the toilet, is the corruption there. Absolutely, the people running the sport, the governing bodies, the rugby unions, the Men in Blazers are making the money, the players are not. And they should not have actually tried to consider restructuring the rugby format internationally. Absolutely not. They should have focused on revenue sharing 50-50 per test match. I'm sorry. The gulf between an appearance fee of £20,000 to £500 is not right. I don't care who runs their unions. On that basis alone, and this point has been raised for years now, since pre the last World Cup. This has been rumbling on now for 5, 6, 7 years in open discussion, and not a single thing has changed. It is wrong. And the Tier 1 nation players, they don't need that money. When you're on centralised contracts and you're on big money and you're getting selected for your country at Tier 1 nation level, you don't need that extra 20 grand. It's a bonus. Those players in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 nations do. And that is wrong. And I'm sorry. That's the issue with World Rugby. Rugby League is a different kettle of fish. They've got different issues internationally. Rugby Union, that's where their main problem lies, is sharing the revenues properly and fairly. And they don't. They don't. And I can sit here and I'm not a financial expert by any means. Okay. I know basic maths. But 20 grand to £500 is a disparity that should not be there. at all. That is a disgrace to a sport that is one of the biggest sports in the world, with a massive TV audience for this Japanese World Cup. They've really marketed it really well in Japan. My Twitter feed has been constantly filled up with the countdown, the yearly countdown. It's they've really pushed the marketing for the World Cup. And while I haven't seen many adverts on the TV here, it doesn't matter. The online marketing on YouTube, on the ads, on Twitter, on any website you go up with the ads popping up, it's there. It is there. And the opportunity is to help these tier 2 and tier 3 nations grow, because what happens to Tonga and Fiji and Samoa, their best players play for New Zealand, play for Australia. They're going to go elsewhere where they're going to get paid 20 grand an appearance. That's why they switch the allegiance. It's not because they don't want to play international rugby. They want to get paid to play. I am. I'll be able to watch the Rugby League games in full. I'll be able to watch all 3 of them. No problem. The Rugby Union World Cup, I'm going to miss a lot of games. It's just the days that the group pool stages take place. As the tournament progresses, I'll be able to watch more games, absolutely. But I would love to watch every game if I could. It's just obviously not possible. But I'll catch what I can, and I'll watch what I can, and I'll report on what I can. I'm looking forward to both. It's 2 different styles. It's 2 different codes. League and Union are 2 different codes. I think Rugby Union internationally is better. Rugby League at club level is better. I think that's my view on how both codes sit right now. Internationally, Union's better. Club level, League's better. And then you can debate which is the best league. And I always go, it's the NRL for Rugby League. And when it comes to Rugby Union, Super Rugby has its issues. And the club game as a whole is not as healthy as people realise. International is why I enjoy watching Rugby Union. Rugby League is I prefer watching the NRL. I'm one of those guys. But I am looking forward to the Lions tour. Pity they're not playing Australia this year. They'll be playing Australia next year. So there's something to look forward to. The Pro 14, I've watched the odd Pro 14 game. I've watched a fair few Pro 14 games the last couple of years on Free Sports, I think, and Pro Sport, Premier Sports. Yeah, there are issues with the Pro 14. It's mostly to do with the Welsh club's financial viability. That's the big issue. Is the money side of the Welsh game. Problems are still there. The problems have been lingering on with the Welsh club level in the Pro League for years, and they're not going away anytime soon. Super Rugby's got problems as well. International Rugby Union is pretty good quality. Let's not kid ourselves. It's the club game that's in crisis, whereas in Rugby League, the club game is better off. But there are issues there as well. I think both codes could, need to get some thinking caps on and actually try and solve some of the issues that they have. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens after the World Cup when it comes to the structures of the sport, Rugby Union. And yeah, I mean the cheaters. I don't look. Super Rugby has a problem because Western Force have gone. And the Southern Kings and the Cheaters have gone to the Pro League, and New Zealand Rugby Union, the All Blacks, financially, they're running out of money. They're not filling their stadiums. They're just not filling the stadiums in Super Rugby, and we can all debate about the quality of Super Rugby. There's some good rugby to be played there. I've watched a fair few games and been really impressed with what I've seen, but financially, club level Rugby Union is in crisis across the world, and yeah, money is a massive problem. I don't know what else to say. I think Super Rugby is destroying itself. The club game in Europe is in a better place, but to a point. There are money issues in the club game in Europe as well. While the club game in Europe has more money, to a point, the TV deals are not necessarily the best and the most accessible. I don't know what you do. I'm not an expert, but I would say that it's a well-known fact that there are money issues in both codes. for different reasons, and there are issues there. But for some reason, rugby union has more issues than rugby league. It's mad. Although rugby league does have problems, especially with the Bradford Bulls not playing at Odsal next season. There are clubs that are losing money hand over fist, that are reliant on their owners to keep bailing them out, and crowd numbers are falling in Super League. So, and we've seen the Challenge Cup final have the 2 lowest attendances since the war, back to back. So, I don't know what you say there. I don't know how you do that. Look, we know that there's more club games on free to view TV now than what there was 5 years ago. We are starting to see more club games, be it in Europe or regular season, get put on free to air TV. I've seen a fair few the last couple of years, but the issue is finances. It doesn't matter what the TV deal is. It doesn't matter if you have shared rights, which I think is the best way to go. Share the rights. The issue is there's not enough money in the sport at all. Money is going missing, and money is just not there. Super Rugby, the Super Rugby franchise system is not working because crowds are not there. Teams are being forced to fold or move on. And look at the Super Rugby. We've lost the Cheetahs and the Southern Kings. They've gone to the Pro 14. They've decided to survive and carry on. Western Force, gone. Sunwolves, gone. That means there's Melbourne Rebels are struggling financially. They're really up against it, which would leave only 3 teams in Australia if the Melbourne Rebels were to go tits up. New Zealand has 5 teams in Super Rugby. 5. No other nation has 5 teams in Super Rugby. It's over-dominated by New Zealand teams, and there isn't. And the New Zealand Rugby Football Union has come out and said, "Yeah, we have money problems. We're running out of money." The most successful, sellable franchise in the world, the All Blacks, the most successful international rugby union team of all time, the most marketable product you have, and they can't keep them all together. They can't afford to pay them all. It tells you what you need to know. The fact that the Sunwolves weren't given the support needed, but the Japanese domestic league has got the corporate sponsorship, and the Japanese domestic teams weren't willing to give up their best players. Why would you? Why would you when you're giving up your best teams to get battered and players injured when they could be helping the domestic league? And the Japanese domestic league is actually quite good quality. They're all professional. It's good quality. It's not necessarily the best quality in the world, but it's good quality. Why would you want to release your best players to play for the Sunwolves to get injured and to not be available for selection for key league games? It's a no-brainer. This is why there's a problem. And then you look at the Shoot Shield in Australia. It's a really poor quality competition. The Curry Cup and the ITS Cup, I think, in New Zealand, far better quality level than the Australian domestic league. We've got Major League Rugby in the US and Canada. We've got the Southern Hemisphere equivalent in South America coming soon. Major League Rugby is entering its 3rd season next year. That tells you all you need to know. That Super Rugby's actually struggling, and other leagues and other organisations are coming forward and saying, how about we play games in these locations at a professional level? There you go. As I say, look, Liam Kirk being in training camp is not a surprise. He's been drafted. He's done well at the prospects camp of the, he'll still be at training camp. He'll still be there. It's the first week of training camp, pre-season games and all that. He will still be there, and it's a chance for the AHL and ECHL affiliate players to showcase their skills. It's a chance for them to earn a space on the roster spot, push for recognition, and give the coach something to look at going forward. A lot of people argue the NHL preseason goes on too long and not all the main players play, but some teams actually play some of their strongest lineups in preseason as well. They work out all their combinations, but it's a good opportunity for the prospect pool to impress and say, look, this is how we're developing, and this is how we're going, and this is what's happening with us. Give us a shout. there is a massive opportunity for players like Liam Kirk, who are late round draft picks, to really showcase their skills and what they're capable of going forward. And his rights are owned by the Coyotes, so they're going to call him up. All their prospects that are that they've drafted are gonna be there, and then they whittle it down. They say, right, this is the main roster going forward. Here's those guys who are part of the wider roster. And then there's the two-way contracts with the ECHL and AHL, etc., etc. And here's those that are still developing in juniors or European minor leagues or over here in European major leagues, and they work out their organisational structure. That's what the training camps are all about. Some of their prospect pool might get a shout out onto the main roster. There could be an injury or two, so it's all speculation. But training camps like this, the preseason, a lot of the prospect pool get a chance to play in the games, so it's good experience for them, and is what it is. There will be some shocks at this World Cup. I think it's a very open World Cup. I think discussed it before. A lot's changed since I did that preview video back in March. So much has changed this summer. So many things have happened. And what's happened with Wales in the last few days, with Rob Howley being sent away from the coaching staff and fired, basically, and is now having to go through this investigation over betting breaches. That's a big thing to happen. But Stephen Jones is part of the new coaching setup that's coming in anyway. So as a silver lining, if you are a Welsh Rugby Union fan, is that the future coaching team has already got a guy in there as part of the transition. I think that would help, but I don't think this is what Wales wanted, obviously, to have their backs coach basically fired publicly and put forward basically having to go through an investigation where they find out how guilty he is. It looks very likely that he's in a lot of trouble, and then that raises other questions about the integrity of the Welsh team behind the scenes, if there's any betting breaches and any other allegations can come forward. No. You can have a player go to Europe as part of your prospect pool. In the NHL, there's a fair few NHLers who've been drafted who've spent a season or two back in Europe playing while they're in the prospect pool on a special kind of contract where they can come back. But you wouldn't be on a two-way contract. You're playing in a different league, a different style of hockey, different rules, different ice surface. They can't observe how you're doing. They're not part of an affiliate. You have to be an affiliated team. This is where the AHL and ECHL in the US and Canada are affiliates of the NHL. So you have like a development pyramid. Whereas if you've got a player who's been drafted from a European league and they've said, look, you're staying in Europe for this year, the team can assign you and have an agreement with the team that they've drafted from, saying, look, can the player stay here? We'll pay some of the salary. We'll pay some of the costs, but you wouldn't be on a two-way contract with like the AHL, ECHL, and the Elite League. Absolutely not. Partly because there's a big thing called the Atlantic Ocean in the way, and keeping tabs on a player who's playing, not only out, overseas, but in a different continent. That's something that doesn't happen. But in the future, with the way the sport's developing, could the NHL and have affiliations with the European leagues? Absolutely, I think it's something that could happen. But as we stand now, no. Australia and France. Australia proved you can beat the All Blacks with a record scoreline, and really embarrassed them in the Rugby Championship. When I say really embarrassed them, that was a very one-sided result about a month ago. The French, there's so many issues with French rugby. I've discussed them to death. They've lost their flair. They've got no discipline. Their fitness is a massive issue, and the coach is clearly not well liked by the players because there's been so many bouts of ill discipline within the French camp over the years that it is what it is. But the French, for some reason, when people write them off, they get to finals. They've got to several World Cup finals when they've not played well for long periods, and they somehow scramble to a final. There is an issue with French rugby that's been there for a while. There's a big malaise. There is a problem with structures, discipline, fitness, a culture within the team setup. Definitely a culture issue. When I say culture, I mean behavioural. We've seen players constantly breach team discipline. We've seen players suspended, thrown out, not selected. There's clearly an issue with coaching setup and players. They need to figure out something. They've sort of figured out a halfback combination that actually works with a fly half who's actually a fly half in Entomac, which is great to see because he's a very skillful player. But at the same time, this is not a healthy French side. They're so up and down. They're all over the place. One minute they're brilliant in a phase of play, and the next 75 minutes they're hopeless, or vice versa. They can have all this possession, all this dominance, and lose. A one-off game, yeah, but I can't see them being consistent enough, and I can't see the Australians getting to the final either. But the Australians have their own issues. Big problems. The Israel Folau saga has had a damaging effect and a massive impact on this team. But it's a tournament, and injuries can happen, suspensions. You got to be consistent. I don't think Australia and France are consistent enough, and that's what wins the tournaments is consistency and team unity. And Australia and France, there's a lot of issues with team unity in both those camps over the last 12 months. France for longer. I think what's going to happen is it's just going to be an unpredictable tournament. Japan at this time of year is still very hot and humid as well. I remember watching the Football World Cup in Japan back in 2002. I went on the TV, and the heat and humidity had a massive impact on how games were played. Massive impact. And it's still that kind of similar conditions now, even though it's September, October time. While the further north you go in Japan, like Sapporo, like it is here, pleasant conditions to play in. The further south you go, there's still typhoons. That's hurricanes to you and me. It's a Pacific name for a hurricane storm is a typhoon. They still have those big typhoons. Weather can have a massive impact on how games are played. The weather will have a big impact on ball handling and all sorts. But even the humidity, it's still going to be a slippery ball. Ball retention is going to be important, and discipline. If in hot, humid conditions, you don't want to be giving away penalty after penalty after penalty. This is where England, I think, have a problem, and France. I think Australia do have quality players, but I think the Israel Folau situation is massively overshadowing their victory over the All Blacks the other week and their preparation for this tournament. It's basically been the Israel Folau saga for the better part of a year and a half since last Easter, not just this Easter, last Easter. This has been an ongoing issue with Rugby Australia and Israel Folau. It's been going on now for a long, long time. That's having an impact. The whole saga has had an impact, and it raises questions over the governance of Rugby Australia by Riley Castle, who's come from Rugby League, from the Canterbury Bulldogs. She's come into rugby union, and it doesn't help that she's a Kiwi as well, and she's running the Australian Federation. There's a whole host of issues there. It's some people are going it's political correctness, others going it's bigotry. It's not resolved. There's lawsuits. There's all sorts going on. It's had a damaging impact on rugby in Australia, the reputation of the sport, and I'll look at it, and rugby union in Australia has a problem. One, the Israel Folau saga, and then Curtly Beale and some of his antics as well. There's a lot of issues with various players having various misdemeanors over the years, and those two, Curtly Beale and Israel Folau, have had the biggest impacts on Australian rugby for all the negativity that the headlines that they have. But rugby union in Australia has another problem. The domestic rugby competition, the Shoot Shield, is crap. I'm not going to lie, the quality level is shocking. Another issue is when kids are teenagers, there's a thing called rugby league in Australia called the NRL, and I'm being sarcastic, obviously, but the NRL comes calling, and the NRL says, "Look, we can offer you $60,000-$70,000 a year starting salary, straight up. Yes, please." Bang. I'm gonna name a player who is a NRL legend, who plays for the Roosters, used to play for the Melbourne Storm. Cooper Cronk. He originally was a fly half, scrum half, a rugby union player at school. At the age of 18, he decided not to continue with a rugby union career. He went into rugby league, and look what he's done in the game since. Can you imagine if Cooper Cronk was playing at fly half or scrum half for the Wallabies, or one of the Super Rugby franchises? Can you imagine that? If you don't know who Cooper Cronk is, you just got to type his name in, and you got to look at his success in the NRL and what he's achieved with the Roosters and the Storm. He's the only player to win back-to-back NRL grand finals with two different teams, and has a chance to get a third in a row. Yeah. He played the grand final last year with a broken shoulder. Shoulder blade was sheared in half. The guy's a machine. He's retiring this year because he's decided enough's enough. My body's broken. But Cooper Cronk, if you want to see and look at a player who's been lost to rugby union in Australia to rugby league, there is a prime example of where Rugby Australia is failing. It is failing to keep a lot of talent. It has some talented players like Quade Cooper, but Cooper Cronk, that is the problem that they have. Is the NRL can go, look, we can pay you more money as a starting salary for a young player. We can actually get you professionally on the books at the age of 18, 19. You can get a professional contract of about $100,000, $70,000, something. A good, solid contract, a higher than average wage, and you're 18 years old. That is a possibility. It's not a certainty, but rugby league can offer that kind of, hey, if you're decent enough, you can get a contract with us. There you go. Also, the Super Rugby decision, or the Rugby Australia decision to not support Western Force. The amount of money Western Force were asking for is the same amount of money that Israel Folau wants on a yearly contract. There you go. They were willing to pay Israel Folau this stupid amount of money when Western Force were asking for a shade less than that just to survive and secure their funding. And what Rugby Australia is, we'll pay all the money to the Christian fanatic. We won't pay the money to a whole team of players. We'll pay the money to one player. Rugby Australia, they mismanaged that. They put too much. They gave Israel Folau. They gave into Israel Folau's wage demands, stupid amount of money, and the amount of money that was given to Israel Folau was nearly the exact same amount of money that Western Force needed to carry on as a Super Rugby franchise. That is how bizarre and short-sighted Rugby Australia is. They could have had a team at Western Force that could have, weren't the best team in the world. Let's just admit that weren't the best team. But if they could keep going long term, you're producing players for the national side. You're growing the sport in Western Australia. Fans, money comes in. Nah, we're going to focus with Israel Folau. Oh, he's made some homophobic remarks, and we're going to have to fire him. Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there. How am I doing? I'm doing all right. Just plodding along. I've got a busy weekend where I'm not going to be about visiting some friends and stuff, but I'm doing okay. New South Wales is a rugby league heartland. Rugby union should target other states. Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree more with that. The issue is rugby league has a problem as well. It's too East Coast centric. They've neglected Perth. They haven't looked at Adelaide for 20 odd years. This is the issue. Is the AFL have got ahead in Australia, and the NRL is second place. But these two leagues, the AFL and the NRL, are far ahead Super Rugby. Far ahead. Leaps and bounds ahead. The A-League is ahead of Rugby Union right now in reach because they have teams in all the states apart from the Northern Territory and Tasmania. If the A-League is getting a nationwide recognition, that tells you something's gone horribly wrong. The NRL are taking games on the road to Perth, to Darwin. It tells you something's gone wrong. On the Southern Australia side, Adelaide, I think underutilized market. But Adelaide is a slow growing city. It's not growing as fast as Perth or Darwin. More money is going into those locations. I wouldn't say Australia has too many football codes. They're a sports mad country. Sports mad country, and it's part of the culture to be, you know, to be as sportsman as they are. It is just part of their national culture. It's part of to be an Australian. You've got to be a bit mad, really. And I think I wouldn't say they got too many sporting codes. I think you could say, well, there's too many sports. I think. What do you think? Like remarks like that, is there a time limit to those comments, or once said ban? I'm assuming we're talking about Israel Folau. I'm going to go with Israel Folau on that one, but I don't know. The time limit. Well, we're in the social media age now. You can't say things and get and off the cuff anymore. There's always someone with a camera phone. I don't know. Retroactive punishment is a dangerous thing. It sets a dangerous precedent. But there are certain individuals in sport who've got a reputation for being controversial or being dirty players or whatever it may be. It's a difficult one. I don't like the state of the PC culture we're living in, where we're pandering to the minority groups on the left wing. I don't like it. I think there's a lot of dangerous precedents being set. But at the same time, it's the way culture's going. I'm not a big fan of it myself, but I don't know. I think we've gone a bit too far, over pandering to some of the what I call the loony left. But I try and keep politics out of it. But sport and politics are becoming more and more entwined as the days pass, which I don't like either. I think sport should be separate from politics on a professional level. If we're talking about kids playing sport and keeping healthy, then absolutely, yeah. But Rugby Australia. Look, I've looked at it and I've read into it, and I will say this about the whole Israel Folau situation: they should never have paid him that amount of money to begin with. If that meant he went to Europe to play, so be it. But we wouldn't be in the situation now. If he went back to rugby league to play, so be it. We wouldn't be in the situation now. I think Israel Folau, there's a long game with him. On the Western Force side of things, the amount of money they were asking for was the amount of money they were willing to pay Israel Folau. That shows you how short-sighted Rugby Australia were and how desperate they were to basically win this World Cup, was to keep Israel Folau around. But you can't win a World Cup with one player. You need a nation full of players and strong teams, and that's where Western Force could have been a massive short-sightedness. So Rugby Australia has been badly run anyway, and I've said about Cooper Cronk in the NRL, who was a rugby union player as a kid. There's a whole host of other players who are playing in the NRL as well, who played rugby union at youth level, that have been lost to rugby union in Australia and have gone to rugby league because rugby league can pay them and union can't. The Shoot Shield sums that up. Israel Folau has done this more than once, especially in these contract negotiations. It's all down to money, really. Why he's done it? Well, money. I still think that these behaviours are learned behaviours when it comes to hatred and bigotry. They're learned behaviours. But Israel Folau, the fact that Rugby Australia were willing to pay him all that money when Western Force were asking for a little shade less a year to survive tells you all you need to know about the short-sightedness of that organisation and how that organisation is run. They are basically reactive to everything. It is what it is. I don't know. wages between Union League and the UK. I will say this about rugby league and rugby union: they're both badly underpaid compared to football. If we're talking on a UK side of things, because obviously in Australia and North America they call it soccer, but if you look at how much rugby players on average, so we're taking up centralised contracts and the top talent in the Super League, they're underpaid. The average salaries of both I think they're about equal now for the top level, but football players in the Premier League and the Championship, their salaries are obscene. What they earn in a week, a rugby union or rugby league player earns in a year. And I'm not joking. An average rugby union, rugby league player on either code earns about 60 to 80 grand a year before tax. That's your average weekly salary for a Premier League player. So that just shows you how wrong things currently are. I think a lot of people believe footballers are overpaid. If I'm honest, I think they're obscenely overpaid. But that's enough said on that. I mean, I could really get myself in trouble if we discuss pay brackets. I think, yeah, look, we're talking, we've mentioned salary caps. Do you know who supports it? Oh, yes, the TV subscription. Stop buying Sky and BT. Plain and simple. If people stop buying Sky and BT subscriptions, I think the football players, suddenly their wages become unsustainable. But enough people keep purchasing the subscription media. Enough people do. So, look, I think what's happened. A rugby union or rugby league or ice hockey career, for example, American football, your career could be done in a couple of years. At the top level, you're done, retired. There's been a whole host of, and you don't really hear about it because when they retire young, it's not a star player. But I've mentioned earlier Dave Denton, Scottish forward, and Pat Lambie, a South African back, who both retired in the last 12 months. They both retired at the age of 29, at the same age as me, and their careers are already over. I mean, I'm working on the bins. I earn in a year what a really crap championship player earns in a week. There you go. That just sums it up. I earn in a year what a football player could earn on average in a week just by being a dossing squad player. It's just not right at all. It's completely not right. It's completely out of control. And salaries don't look like they're going to go down anytime soon, especially as Gareth Bale wanted his obscene wage demands. He's gone down in my book. Neymar, look what he's done to the transfer market. And yeah, Jimmy Hill was held as a hero because he demanded that the upper cap, yes, there was a salary cap in the 60s, be lifted. And it was. And look how many clubs are struggling financially now. Well done, Jimmy Hill. Well done. The man with the chin. He's dead now, so we can't argue with him about how much of a dickhead he was. But at the time, it was seen as the right thing to do. But it's turned out to be a bad decision. Absolutely. And I keep harking back to this year. The year I was born, the average salary for a top flight player was £60,000 a year. Just let that sink in. 60 grand a year was the average salary for a top flight player. A year. That's now the average salary a week. It's wrong. It is very, very wrong. Look, Zach Hardacre. I mean, look, I've done videos on Zach Hardacre. I think there are problems with him. He's been had allegations of racism, homophobia, the drug taking, the drink driving, the fleeing a crash scene. The guy, the guy is not a good role model for young people. He's had multiple chances. We'll see what happens with his career going forward, but I think he's not really the player he was really, but he's constantly been in the news for the wrong reasons. And right now, Super League and Rugby League in this country needs a couple of good role models and a couple of good heroes to make national news, and it's just not happening. So whether that's down to the RFL's marketing policy, the fact the Challenge Cup was so badly attended for the second year in a row, and that's not the fans' fault, that is the RFL's fault. The fact the TV deal for the Super League is shit, plain and simple. The fact they didn't have the GB Lions for over a decade. I could keep going on and on. Zach Hardacre, I don't have time of day for him. He's given opportunity after opportunity and keeps fucking it up. Plain and simple. Sod the PG stuff now. Zach Hardacre keeps mucking it up. He's been given so many opportunities to sort himself out. Can't continue. I'm sorry. One more screw up, I think he should be done. It's a privilege. I keep saying this as well. And all these people go, oh, look, he's a sportsman, we've got to be all nice. It's a privilege to be in a position to be a professional athlete and paid big money. Not a right. It's a privilege. It's not a right. He's privileged to be in that position. But at the same time, he screws it up, he's done. He's done. He's in a very privileged position. They all are. They screw it up, they're done. Take the privilege away. Anyway, plain and simple. They'll start behaving then. But I think rugby league and rugby union and ice hockey have an issue with recreational drug use. I think that is clear. That is clear. These sports do have an issue with recreational drug use. Evgeny Kuznetsov gets only 3-game ban for cocaine misuse, where he's failed a drugs test, and the IIHF have banned him for 4 years. He's decided not to appeal that ban. This happens in May, comes out over the summer. He's given the ban, and we're like, rightly so. Harsh, 4 years, a bit harsh, but rightly so. The drugs test he failed was done 3 days after a video emerged of him in a hotel room in Vegas when he was playing for the Washington Capitals against the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL with a large amount of drugs on the table with a woman who's not his wife on the bed, who's looking a little bit paid for. Okay? And that all blew over, disappeared. 3 days later, he fails a drugs test. We don't find out until later on that he was the player who failed the drugs test in the World Championships ice hockey in Slovakia earlier this summer. Comes out last month. He goes back to the NHL, goes, I'm very, very sorry. He gets the 3-game ban. That is a joke. That is a joke, an utter joke. Now, I might, as an average civvy, have the occasional party, okay? Now, I smoke a bit of cannabis and I do other bits and pieces. Oh, I'm not denying that I do these things. I'm not. I do it on my own time, not at work. That's how, if I can function at work, that's fine. Oh, look, If I was to go to work high as a kite, I deserve to get sacked. I deserve to get sacked. But I don't earn enough money. But at the same time, if you're functioning and you do it in your own time, let's say you book some time off and you get high as a kite, do that. You're not on work time. You're not on work time. And there should be policies in place where there's rehabilitation available. Absolutely. The fact is, these guys and girls, some of them girls, are in very privileged positions and they're earning a hell of a lot of money. Hell of a lot of money. It's privilege, not a right. It's a privilege to be there, not a right. Because they've taken a roster spot from someone who has not made the grade because there wasn't enough roster spots available. That's how I see it. There's someone who's not quite made it because that person has got into that squad place in a team sport, with that guy stuck in the reserves or stuck at the lower level because that guy has taken a roster spot. That guy screws up and keeps getting chances. That's not right. Oh, look, we can discuss, the use of narcotics, and I do believe that there should be a legalization argument and a regulation argument, and that's for the other channel. That is totally for the other channel. If I was to make a video, I'd say, look, we have to legalize. We have to stop this war on drugs. It's not working. People are still dying. Look at our streets. Look at the gang crime. Look at the mess that is drugs policy. Absolutely, we can have that discussion. But as it currently stands under the WADA code, the World Anti-Doping Organization, okay, the World Anti-Doping Code, and various other things, the NHL does not see cocaine as a performance enhancer. The Super League and the NRL does not see cocaine, and it's not. It's a recreational drug use, but it still comes up as a fail. The issue is this. They're not testing regularly enough. The fat players are openly using it during season and on match days, as found out with Ranky Chase. I think the other guy was Walker. I forget his first name. And Zach Hardacre in the space of a few weeks. On match days we're using. Pre-match tells you there's a problem. Kuznetsov using international tournament. allegations of using it in regular season as well, with the video that surfaced in the Vegas hotel room, says to me professional sport does have an issue with recreational drug misuse, prescription drug misuse. We know about with Derek. If you're an NHL fan, Rick Ripon committing suicide, Derek Boogaard overdosing on prescription medication and alcohol, all these things. We know there is an issue there. We know they're not taking it seriously enough. But at the same time, on the recreational side of things, these guys are in a privileged position. Absolutely. They know the rules. Do it in the postseason, absolutely. You can party hard in the summer. You can party hard in the offseason. Do what you want for a couple of weeks. You've won, let's say you win the Stanley Cup. Party hard, I don't care. You're human. But if your contract states, oh, by the way, under work conditions, if you fail this test, you're done. I don't know. At the end of the day, narcotic legalization and recreational drug use legalization is a debate for the other channel, as I say, and that is that's a legal judgment. Here's the funny thing. This is a massive loophole in our laws. To consume illegal narcotics is not actually illegal. It's to be in possession of them. So I can swallow all the drugs in the world. It's inside me. Not on my person. It's in my person. It's not illegal unless I'm trafficking it for cash. So yeah, I can consume cannabis. I can consume ecstasy. For example, hypothetically, it's not illegal. If I possess it, however, it is. And this is a flawed system. But back on point. Rugby league seems to have a problem. Cricket, ironically, seems to have a problem, mostly with alcohol, but does seem to have a culture. Yes, alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine, absolutely, but they're regulated. If you notice, those drugs, which they are regulated. They're on packaging. They have to say this product contains nicotine. This is an alcohol. This is age restricted. They are actually age restricted products. Caffeine, energy drinks, it's advised that under 16s don't drink them and you have to have ID. Some stores, it's company policy to ID you. I have been ID'd for energy drink. But they have to state this product contains caffeine. There have to be health warnings on there. They are regulated, they are controlled, they are heavily taxed. This is the thing. They are heavily taxed, they're regulated, they're known about, the risks are there, bang, regulated. The fact they're not very good for us is another thing entirely, but it's known about. It's known about. Now, the other channel is the History Boffin. It's on my links channels list for you guys. But as I say, alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine are regulated. You have to say this product contains caffeine. This product is not suitable for under 16s or under 5s or whatever it is. Nicotine and alcohol, bang, how many units? This is a poison. They have to be vape shops. They have to put the warnings on. That's the law. What comes under the testing regime, though, is the illegal banned ones. And players are clearly, it's a known fact that in any rugby union, rugby league, ice hockey dressing room, there are players using. Absolutely. It's known that there are players using. And these are recreationals. Cannabis is a big one. Cocaine is a big one. Speed's a big one. They're known to be using. And it's a badly kept. It's basically it's a known secret, basically. So it's a secret. We don't know who's using, but we know they are using. And the only way to figure out is when it becomes public. Alex Hales, cricketer. There you go. Is a cocaine issue. Straight up. Ben Stokes alcohol. I mean, the Ben Stokes family. I'm not a fan of the Murdoch media. This is why I've never actually been a fan of Sky Sports, really, and giving him any money. He doesn't own it anymore. But there's no Murdoch publications in this household that I live in. My granddad used to read the Times a lot. Yeah. Bye-bye. That's no longer read in this household. My ex-partner, her family, very anti-Sky, very anti-Murdoch. The thing is, Ben Stokes, who's basically who signed the TV deal, the Murdoch family, he made a lot of his money because of Sky Sports. His wages are high enough because of the TV deal with Sky. So he takes with one hand and gives the middle finger with the other. It's a toxic relationship. Um, the Murdoch based media and sport is a toxic relationship. I'm not a fan of the Sun. The way they've dealt with a whole host of issues to do with players, clubs, issues in sport. But I haven't actually read the article, so I can't really comment on the article itself. And it hasn't been retracted. It's still out there in the public domain. I haven't read the article. I choose not to. It's the Sun. But I think Ben Stokes hasn't helped his own case with some of his own antics. He's made himself fair game for the media, and however grubby the media may be, there is an agenda there. Had he not necessarily been, I don't know, a racist or a bigot towards the disabled, mocking the disabled, or punching a guy in the face in a nightclub on a piss up, breaching team curfew, he may not be in this position. But at the same time, the family member willingly, it seems, gave the information to the grotty newspaper and made a bit of money out of it. So the whole thing is a grubby affair. Ben Stokes, I'm not a big fan of Ben Stokes, personally. But I think the Murdoch media is scummy. But Ben Stokes has made a lot of his money because of the Murdoch media. Comcast only bought Sky officially last year. Ben Stokes has been on a centralised contract for a couple of years now. So Ben Stokes made a lot of his money because of Rupert Murdoch. And now he's at war with the Murdoch empire. It's look, the Sun is a grubby newspaper. It has been since Murdoch bought it. It has been. I mean, the Times went downhill when Murdoch bought it. I mean, Murdoch's tried to buy the British media, and now he's been forced to sell bits of it. But look, the situation with sport is because of Murdoch has destroyed sport by his TV companies. And we could discuss our cricketers doing speed properly. We know they're doing cocaine. We know they're doing cannabis. We know they're a bunch of pissheads. Debated it for years on this channel. We know there's an alcohol issue. We know there's a cocaine issue. We know there's a cannabis issue. We know there's various other issues. We've seen football players doing NOS. We know football players have done speed and cocaine and ecstasy. We look. Some high-profile players get caught, but look, the testing regime is a joke. We know this. The NHL testing regime, and this is what's going to really shock you: 2 compulsory tests for a player per season. 1 in pre-season, 1 in regular season per player. Now, bear in mind, they've got to test 600 odd players who are NHLPA affiliated and those on 2-way contracts and all that, free agents from Europe and all sorts. So near enough 700-800 players have got to be tested. But they only have to be tested twice. And most of those tests take place before Christmas. So second half of the season, you can get away with it. Plain and simple. If you get your 2 tests out of the way that are compulsory, do as much as you want. Tuffers, Beefy, they both liked a good time. Well documented that they liked a bit of a smoke. At the end of the day, while I argue for legalization and regulation of what is currently illegal recreational drug use, and I've gone through and dealt with all this shit. I think the way to go is regulated and legalized, regulated and controlled, much like alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, these kind of things, where it's regulated, and you take players are still going to do it. It's interesting that we've ended up on the recreational drug use in sport, but it's a big problem. Big problem. It's like gambling addiction as well. Drinking drugs, but look, I don't drink as much these days, but at the same time, I'm saving money. I've changed my lifestyle habits, not to get healthier, it's just to save money. I still go out every now and then. I still have fun, but it is what it is. They probably do get drugs tested in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but I do know there's only 2 compulsory tests on the NHL testing system per year, 1 in pre-season, 1 regular season. Once you've had your second test, that's your last compulsory test. So you're very likely to go, okay, I've got that out of the way. Let's go on a sesh. I've just played my 500th game. Let's go on a sesh. I've just scored 100 goals. This is my 100th goal. Let's go. There are milestones in the sport that you want to celebrate. But look, at the end of the day, there are issues with the testing regimes not being great. Players openly, pretty much, going out and flouting team curfews, all sorts. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there needs to be more independent league doctors rather than team doctors looking after the care and welfare of players. I think there's a whole host of issues where we could argue that the teams have too much control over the players, or it's on the team's court too much, and the team something like they. But you drink loads of strong tea. Everyone loves a cup of tea. I mean, I have my tea black, 2 sugars, black like my soul, as I say. But at the end of the day, I don't. I drink every now and then. I don't drink regularly. I've cut down my use of energy drinks significantly in the last month or so. But that's not by like a lifestyle. I want to be healthier. That's me going, you know what, I'm saving money. It is always easy to leave it up to the team and pass the buck along, but you have to look at the drugs testing regimes they have in place and are they fit for purpose. That's why I'm still like, oh no. I'm generally a mess health wise. My body's falling apart. Trust me, I'd rather be fat, not slim. But there we go. I'd rather have a bit more meat on me than what I am because it's fucking cold. I've also, most of my bin lorry crew have been sick this week, and I've caught a bit of a sniffle, and it's just going to be a pain in the ass. I say this, yes, I do agree that there's too much onus on the team, not enough on the league taking responsibility. We've seen it with the peptide scandal in Australia with the AFL and NRL. The teams were allowed to get away with far too much, and the testing regimes were hopeless, absolutely hopeless, with Essendon and Cronulla and a whole host of individual players who played at other teams involved with the Stephen Dank peptide scandal in Australia. Absolutely. That showed the AFL and NRL up. It made them look really out of place and not doing enough on the testing. Ben Cousins, the AFL player who had a checkered history with drugs and alcohol, who's in and out of prison now. Again, the West Coast Eagles, the AFL stayed back, let them take control. Yes, they did testing, but he was never caught. They could never catch him on a drugs test. They didn't intervene early enough to go, you need help, mate. He was a functioning addict from 16 years old. 14, 15, 16 years old, he was already a drug addict. And he was playing professional AFL, and he was a functioning addict. No one stepped in to help him then. They allowed him to get to the point where eventually his behaviour got so out of control that the police got involved. He had to go drug rehabilitation, all sorts of things. Again, the AFL allowed the team to be in charge. My video on the Sharks show how drug filled they were. Look, I've got to do a video on Paul Gallen because he's now retired. But yes, the peptide scandal had a massive, massive impact on that team, had a massive, massive impact on the players, and damaged the reputation of Australian sport really badly at the beginning of the decade. Essendon haven't fully recovered. Cronulla have recovered to a point, but there have been other issues with Cronulla since the peptide scandal over the last few years. There's been a salary cap breach. There's concerns about the stadium's future, all sorts of financial issues, club CEO getting caught doing drugs, all sorts of things going on with Cronulla as a team recently. But the peptide scandal, massive reputational damage. It dragged on for a couple of years. Same with Essendon. And there's still issues with the peptide scandal now. All these years later, that haven't been resolved. So there's Sander Earl has finally started playing rugby league again after like a 5-year ban for his role in the peptide scandal. He was thrown under the bus as a young player. He was thrown under the bus by the NRL. They ruined his career. He's just starting to play again at NRL level, and he's played rather well. But again, putting that out there, I could do some more videos on it. Whether they get massive view counts or not, that's another thing. Whether you guys want to watch them or not and leave likes and comments, that's again another thing. Because it's all well and good us discussing it, but unless people want to watch it and talk about it, there's no point. Because yes, it's been and done. This is nearly 10 years ago this was going on. It's still rumbling along now, and there's still the reputational damage to players. The reputational damage to Paul Gallen. Paul Gallen, we know, is a grub. He doesn't hide from the fact that he's a dirty player. He plays it on the line. Oh, look, Paul Gallen has now just retired. He's played his last game as of last weekend when the Sharks lost to the Sea Eagles. That's his last game. He would have equaled, if not surpassed, Cameron Smith's record of games had he not been banned for the peptide scandal. Absolutely. There were a few other bans for foul play on the field, but he would have passed Cameron Smith for games. He would have been the first guy to reach 400 games, not Cameron Smith. The peptide scandal did that. And I'm going to argue that in the video. I'm going to say, look, he would have passed 400 games. And I'm going to make reference to the peptide scandal. He could have lost 2 years of his career. There were those calling for him to be banned for life. There were those calling for him never to play ever again. The Ched Evans things, he was actually had a retrial and found not guilty in the second trial, so that throws that all up in the air. Just to point that out, he had a second trial and was found not guilty on a retrial, so his conviction was quashed. So while I'm not a big fan of Ched Evans, again, it's a legal thing, and you have your right to prove yourself innocent. And there was enough evidence at the retrial to prove himself innocent on all counts. So, and there was a lot of questions asked about the first trial about the other defendant getting no charges and being found not guilty when evidence came out. But I should like several sports players have been done for drink driving. I think one guy who used to play for West Brom killed someone by being drunk at the wheel, death by dangerous driving with alcohol. Got a lengthy sentence. But it's an interesting one. I think. Adam Johnson. No, he definitely deserves to stay in prison. Steve Smith and Cameron Bancroft. No, I think Steve Smith, Cameron Bancroft. I think they were naive. It's David Warner who's the one that I really don't like. David Warner is the one that I think has copped a lot of abuse this Ashes series. He's been booed every time he touched the ball, and his batting, he only got 150 in the 5 tests, so his batting has been really poor. He's been found out by the English bowling attack again. But David Warner is one of those individuals who's exceptionally toxic and is not well liked within the sport anyway, and never has been. He's not very popular in Australia or in cricketing circles as a whole. He's not popular. He's not well liked. Steve Smith and Colin Bancroft, I think Cameron Bancroft, they were very naive. I don't think Steve Smith should have been captain of Australia, much like I don't think Joe Root should be captain of England. Personally, I think not enough maturity, not enough. That they're like school kids. They are like school kids. Personally, I don't think they've got enough steel and determination, and I don't think they can sit down and discipline a player and shout at them. They don't like the shouty type. They're just like yes men that are just there to say yes sir, no sir. Joe Root doesn't strike me as an individual who can have that tough conversation with someone where he sits down and basically throws the kitchen sink at someone. He just doesn't have that in him. He just looks like a lost schoolboy. Personally, England in the performance European qualifiers in the Bulgaria game, I could not understand having the 2 holding midfielders. Really bizarre tactics there. Kosovo, that second half was shocking. Defensively. I think Southgate knows where his problem lies, and that's in defence. That's why he keeps playing the holding midfielders to protect that defence. But I'm not sold on England defensively, and I'm not sold on Pickford in goal. Just going to put it out there. I'm just going to say it. Pickford's not an international level goalkeeper. He's too flappy. He doesn't command his box. And outside of Maguire, yeah, that's it for centre backs. Yeah. Oh, look, Gareth Southgate's got them winning games and has got them to a World Cup semi-final. So I think, while I don't necessarily agree with all his tactics, he's getting results out of the team. That's a first. That's something other managers have failed to do since 1996, is get results out of the team. The issue Southgate has, and every manager has had since 1992, is a dropping number of percentage of English players playing in the English Premier League. It's gone down. It's starting to go up, but we're still behind Germany. We're still behind Spain. We're still behind Italy for domestically having enough domestic players playing in it. So that's part of the problem he's got to face. He's got to face the fact that there's not enough English players playing on a given weekend. It's below 45%. It's been as low as 25% on a given match day weekend. That's in the top league. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. That is not good enough for a country that invented the sport not to have enough players playing at the top level because clubs aren't developing them. They rather buy the talent in, import the talent. What else can I say? I think he knows there's a defensive issue that he can't solve with the players available. And players like Gary Cahill saying, you know what, I'm not going to play for England anymore. I'm just going to retire. Players like Jamie Vardy going, yeah, I'm going to retire. He's lost some experience there. He's lost Premier League winners there. He's lost some depth there. And he's gone with the kids. And while players like Sancho and Hudson-Odoi and Tammy Abraham and all this, so they're all doing really great and they're having their flashes in the pan, they're not getting enough games. And Foden isn't in his plans. In fact, not a lot of Man City players are actually in his squad, which tells you something. Does tell you something about the style of play he wants to play. Oh yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a fan of Pickford. I think he doesn't command his area. He's a good shot stopper. That's it. He really is flappy. And when he's having a bad game, you know he's having a bad game because he does have he has a mare. He's either he's going to stop everything or he stops nothing. And that Kosovo game, he stopped nothing. He was poor. The goal we conceded early on was really worrying. Within 35 seconds, we're behind. Now, Kosovo, actually, that's their first competitive match they've lost in 2 years. So while they're a young nation in the sense they've only been playing as a nation for a couple of years at international level, I think 6 years or something, that's their first defeat in a competitive match for 2 years. That tells you how good that side is as a unit and how they play. They go for it. And I don't know. I also think, the homegrown rule. Other leagues and other sports have it where you have to have a minimum number of players playing who are of the home nation. That's not just a British thing; that's a global thing. But I do think the Premier League, while I think there are squad limits on the amount of overseas players you can have in a matchday squad, it is what it is. We've seen Bolton. I think Bolton were the first team not to have a single English player in a starting lineup against Chelsea, I believe. I think it was Chelsea versus Bolton. There was not a single English player on either the benches or starting lineups on a given match day. I think that was back in 2000 or something. It was literally like watching the French Foreign Legion play the French Foreign Legion. There was not a single English player on display. It was all foreigners. That's when you know something's gone wrong. But the trend's been set for a long time. We're starting to see the fact that some British talent is looking at Europe and doing really well and is going to Europe to play because they want to play games. So we're starting to see English players looking abroad to play their careers now. and that's the Premier League's loss, and that's the way the Premier League's going. Is English players are looking abroad to play. Tells you all we need to know. Rather than we've got too many English players playing in the Premier League and we've got to export some talent, we're exporting talent because they're not being given a chance domestically for whatever reason, and it's wrong. But hey, it's what it is. It is what it is. I think, yeah, things have gone very, very wrong. Not enough young local homegrown talents playing for homegrown clubs, not homegrown talent at the hometown club. The loss of Berry from the Football League sums up the situation. Just sums it up in a nutshell. It's like the EFL wanted that situation to come to pass. And the reputational damage to the football in this country is massive. Massive damage to the reputation of the game and the sport. But it's the situation we're finding ourselves in. We have been for quite some time. I don't know what else to say, really. Who do I think will win the Champions League? Far too early to tell. There's about 9 months of football to play before we get to the Champions League final in May. A lot of football to play. And then obviously we've got the Euros as well coming up this summer. The season is still young. Injury is going to have a part to play. Suspensions, loss of form. We'll see what happens. We've got to get the group stages out of the way. Then we've got to go through the knockout. We just don't know what's going to happen. So on that point, who's going to win the Champions League? Far too early. Far too far out. Far too early to tell. Why aren't the EFL held accountable for who buys clubs? Well, they've got the fit and proper persons test, which doesn't work. Anyone can buy a football club. I could have bought Bury for £1. I could have bought that club for £1. That's pretty much it. The EFL, a lot of fat. I mean, the I'm not even a Bury fan, but the amount of fans of football clubs up and down this country, from the Premier League to the non-league, are very critical of the FA. They're very critical of the Premier League. They're very critical of the EFL and the non-league structures. There's a lot of criticism aimed at the footballing governing bodies in this country. Same in Scotland with the SFA, the SPFL. Scottish football fans are critical of their governing bodies. I would have run it better. I doubt it. Wouldn't look. There are issues, massive issues. I think we are getting to a point where there's a breaking point, and somehow Bolton survived to fight another day. They're not out of the woods yet. I will stress that Bolton aren't actually out of the situation they are in just yet. Just because they've got a buyer and they have some certainty, they haven't won a game this season. They've got one draw and they're on minus 11 points. They're looking very likely to get relegated again. So Bolton's situation is in dire straits as well. It is concerning, though, that one club has been thrown out of the Football League and one club was on the brink in the same week. That says to me that, unfortunately, we're back to where we were in '92 when the EFL, the FA, and the clubs all fell out with each other. Hence, why the Premier League was formed. We're just 27 years down the line, and the same problems that were happening 27 years ago are occurring again. There's a breakdown with the relationship between the clubs, the players, the FA, and the leagues. We're just repeating the same cycle every generation, and we're going to be back here again quicker than we think. I think more clubs could end up going up the wall like Bury and Bolton. I think we are now in an era where the situation is such that it's very likely that we're going to have another Bury within the next 12, 24 months, 3 years, 4 years. We're going to be here again. It's going to happen more regularly. And we're going to have to really assess how the TV deal works, ticket prices, the cup competitions, a whole host of things, how the prize money is distributed, parachute payments, governance, who buys the clubs, who runs the clubs, the whole thing, salary caps. They're now talking about a salary cap now after the event. The salary cap should have been in from the start of the Premier League. I can't see the Premier League adopting a salary cap now. They're too far down the road, and the players won't agree to it. No, I still think that the Berry situation was avoidable. The Bolton situation was avoidable. If they allow, I don't know. Bury were founders of the Football League as well, and a two-time FA Cup winner. That's the first time an FA Cup winner has been thrown out of the Football League. So there is history with Bury. The fact that over the years they've stagnated and declined as a team, you could argue that. But a situation came to pass that was avoidable. The EFL allowed Steve Dale to buy that club for £1. The EFL then knew full well 10 weeks before the club was thrown out the Football League that a bid had been placed, which would have avoided the CVA and avoided the 12-point deduction and would have meant games would have been played. The reason why Bolton was allowed to be saved is they had played games. Bury had not. Bury had all their games cancelled, which meant they could not earn any revenue to carry on. The way the fans were treated was disgraceful. The EFL has a lot of questions to answer. They allowed Bolton to play games knowing full well that they couldn't afford to pay their players either. And they completely mishandled it. And yes, other people, members of the football community, have shamed themselves. The EFL is not fit for purpose. The FA is not fit for purpose. And the Premier League's going down the same route as well, because I could buy a football club for £1. It seems I could go, by the way, EFL, I would like to put a bid in to buy Accrington Stanley, for example, because Accrington Stanley play on the smallest budget in the Football League. And I could quite easily buy a club for £1 because Bury are allowed to be bought for £1 by Steve Dale, a guy who's had 14 companies go bust and be liquidated. Just putting it out there. How the fuck did he pass the fit and proper persons test? We will never know. It was like the EFL wanted Bury to fail. And yes, the previous owner got the club into crippling debt. Absolutely. Again, the financial fair play rules not being enforced by the EFL. So the EFL are the ones, that should be questioned. I don't think it's fair. Only big cities can support Premier League clubs. If your club is successful enough, Bournemouth have proven that you can have a smaller fan base and a smaller stadium and be a successful club in the Premier League and make money. That is not a fair assessment. You could say then, okay, you could say Reading shouldn't have a Premier League club. They've been in the Premier League twice as a club. Always do well for crowds when the team are playing well. Solid fan base. Bournemouth is technically an urban area. I don't think it's a town or a city. It doesn't have a cathedral. It's a town. Has a university. Doesn't have a cathedral. Can't be classed as a city. Weird designation we have in this country. But no, Bournemouth, as you would say, a smaller sports market. Pretty solid Premier League side. Pretty solid crowds. Always sell out the Vitality. Yes, it's the smallest stadium in the Premier League. They sell it out. You can't just say only big cities can support Premier League clubs. Bolton, back in the old days with Okocha and Campo and things like that. But they've been mismanaged for years. Yeah, I don't think size of urban area should designate why you have a club or not in a top league. It should be down to success and being viable as a team and actually competitive as a team. You could say, I don't know what's the smallest population size for a town that has a team or a city that has a team in the Premier League, because some urban locations have multiple teams. Like Bristol's got 2 professional clubs. London's got a whole host of professional clubs. I would. Nottingham's got Notts County, Nottingham Forest. Sheffield's got Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday. Technically Rotherham, if you want to really push it. Greater Manchester's got a whole host of clubs, so I think that's a false one. I'm doing all right. I won't be going along on this stream. I'll be ending this stream in a little bit and calling the stream a night. But it's a lot of interesting questions, and we're raising a lot of interesting points. Yeah, Norwich isn't the biggest city in the world, but it's big enough. But it does have a cathedral, so it's classed as a city. I would say Ipswich Southend. Are you saying that if, let's say, Southend got to the Premier League or Ipswich got back to the Premier League, they shouldn't be a Premier League club because they're a smaller location? No. I think you should be in the Premier League on merit, not size of the urban area. The Bury situation is going to have a knock-on effect, which will have an effect on other clubs. It's a domino effect. London's got a whole host of Premier League clubs. You've got Crystal Palace, you've got Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, West Ham. Then you've got the Championship clubs as well. Charlton, Millwall, Birmingham's got Birmingham, West Brom and Aston Villa. Then you've got Wolverhampton Wanderers just across the road. To say, an urban area can only big areas can have Premier League clubs, that's a misnomer because some of these teams are shocking. I mean, Glasgow's got Partick Thistle and Queen of the South. They're not in the SPL. So you're saying that when people say, only the big cities can have the top teams, that's wrong. It's wrong. Yeah. Bristol and Leeds don't. Bradford don't. Sheffield do now with Sheffield United, but didn't for a long, long time. Hull don't. Sunderland don't. It should be down to the success of the team. Yes, Queen of the South do still play at Hampden Park. God knows how. Do they have any fans? Probably not, because Scottish football is broken. But yeah, no, Queen of the South still play at Hampden. The issue with football in this country is not the size of population or your fan base. It's the affordability of it and the wages. At Queen's Park as well. Glasgow's got a whole host of clubs. It's more than Celtic and Rangers in Glasgow. People forget that. It's an interesting one discussing, do we have too many football clubs for the population? And that's a possibility. That's a possibility. We have too many football clubs for the population to support. Now, the issue, though, with Bury and Bolton and other clubs is how badly they've been run for a long time and how the EFL has done nothing. And I don't want to keep going on about the Bury situation and the Bolton situation. I've got to check my messages now. I've got messages coming in. But, you can debate the I check an email that came in from a friend. I've got a busy weekend and I'm not actually at home this weekend, but we can look at getting tickets as well. It's very difficult to get tickets on a match day from the turnstiles like you used to. And the prices are obscene and the touting is a problem and resale's an issue. And again, the football authorities aren't doing enough. This is why I haven't been to football for over a decade. And I'm actually kind of glad I haven't been to a football match for so long. I've actually enjoyed going to my local ice hockey. I've been enjoying going to cricket and rugby and doing other looking at other sports and playing other sports, because for me, I've lost love for football as a sport. I find it less enjoyable now, much less enjoyable. Plus, I think the quality level is less than what it was 10, 20 years ago as well, personally. But that's just me. But there we go. I mean, we've discussed a lot on this live stream. I started on an ice hockey perspective on the NHL, and we're finishing on ticket prices for football. So we've gone full circle again. But look, I've fallen out of love with football because of all the scandal with the sport, and there's a lot of issues with the sport that aren't being resolved, and the governing bodies, be it at national level or international level, are failing the sport massively because they're getting all of that. It's all about the money. We haven't even actually mentioned VAR tonight. the Euro 2020 qualifiers have been played without it, and I would say there's been just as much controversy, but less shouting about it. People have just gone, "Oh, thank God it's not here." I think VAR is the right idea. It's been badly implemented and badly used. That's my opinion on that, and I'm going to leave that there on that topic. Otherwise, we could be here all night. And I do actually have to get up for work at 5:30 tomorrow morning, and then I've got a very busy day tomorrow. I've got to go to work, and I've got to sort myself out for the weekend, and I've got to buy some bits and pieces for the weekend, and then I've got to obviously do what I've got to do. Yeah, I think a lot of people say about football the quality drop. I think Messi and Ronaldo don't win the Ballon d'Or 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There are too many good quality players who may not score the goals, but have the quality. I would say the reason why those two have dominated the Ballon d'Or the last 10 so years is the drop in quality, making them seem better than they actually are. Oh, yeah, I went there. I don't think Ronaldo and Messi are as good as they think they are because they're playing against weaker opposition. Yes, it is still Thursday for another hour and what is it? Hour and 10 minutes? Hour and 40 minutes? Hour and 40 minutes left. Up at 5. No, I'm on the bins, but pretty much down the mines. Am I down the mines? No, I'm on the bins. Bigger bin man. We don't have mines anymore. You should know that. It's all done by machine now, or strike action. No, it's still Thursday UK time. Just under an hour and 20 minutes or so until I hits midnight and it becomes Friday. But no, there is definitely a quality drop in football the last 10 years. I don't think it's the same quality of what it was 10, 15 years ago. And that's a personal opinion. But that's me. Oh, look, again, we could discuss VAR if it was around then and hindsight. But that was the rules at the time, and that's what we have to live by. No one was complaining when Liverpool and Man United won those games. There was less outcry. I think VAR has been badly implemented, and some of the rules are badly worded as well, which doesn't help. Yeah, one sleep. I still don't get to see the opening game because I'm at work. My job, I'm a bin man, so I work on the dust carts. So not a glorious job, but a job nonetheless, and it not necessarily all fun and games, but it is what it is. But anyway, I've got to get some sleep. I would say I'll part on this. I started on an NHL thread, and I'm going to finish on an NHL thread. The NHL regular season 2 weeks away, and I'm happy because my favorite sport's back, and I can discuss more of that with viewers because I've missed ice hockey over the summer. I've really missed ice hockey over the summer so much, and not everyone is a big fan of it, but I've missed it so much. But I will leave it anyway. I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very, very much again for watching it. For tickets for ice hockey, it depends on the team and the league they're playing in this country, but they're very affordable prices. Just look at your geographical location, do a bit of research, find out what your local team is, and you will be surprised how cheap it is for a match night ticket and some good quality sport at various levels, be it semi-pro or full pro. You'll be very, very surprised how affordable it is, considering if you look at your local professional football team, compare the prices and compare season tickets and look over a whole 12-month period how much you would pay, and you'll be surprised. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very, very much for all your questions and all your views. And I'll have some more video content for you before I go away this weekend. And I shall see you all very, very soon. So goodbye for now. Oh, my head.